All right, to close the door. I am doing a live episode of Cylinder Radio here. I plan on doing a regular episode on my podcast. I'm a little backlogged where it's going to be a couple of weeks till it comes out. And I feel like this is pressing enough that I should address it live on here. Also, it looks like I'm going to be having one of those babies here any day now. So I don't know when the next time I'll be able to sit down for a podcast will be. The topic is going to be the COVID vaccine controversy. And it's very strange. We've been divided on a lot of things as a country. And I know the most recent one is probably a lot of obviously everything seems to be political, but a lot of the racial issues, critical race theory and what does that mean and all that kind of stuff is a big dividing factor that really pins a lot of people against one another. And this one feels a little bit different. It feels very similar, but it also feels a little bit different because it does feel a little bit more like the citizens versus institutions. I think it feels a little bit less like it's citizen against citizen and more like it's citizens against big institutions. I am not a medical expert. I say that all the time, but I am very curious. And because I'm someone who's always looking for alternative perspectives and stuff like that, my poor wife, because I'm always seeking this confirmation. So if she says, the sky is blue, then I'm always like, is it? Which gets really annoying, I'm sure. But the COVID vaccine issue is one that I think that needs to be discussed a lot with a lot more grace and an open mind. But people seem to be kind of relegated back to their position and refuse to budge. And I'm not seeing a lot of people who are willing to change their mind on this particular issue. So I'm going to be bringing in a guest, actually maybe two today to talk about this because this is a friend of mine. It's a friend of a friend who's also a friend of mine. And her experience was one that I think, and I'll ask her, but I think probably changed her mind when it came to a lot of these kinds of issues. So what I'm hoping is that you guys can contribute to the conversation, then I can kind of just pick her brain about a lot of this stuff. Let me see if she's in here yet. Doesn't look like yet, but she will be. I don't know. I don't know how risky the COVID vaccine is. It might be not risky at all, and a lot of this stuff is just coincidence. It might be extremely risky. I don't know how dangerous COVID is. It could be extremely dangerous where many COVID deaths went unreported, or it could be that many things that got chalked up as a COVID death was not because of COVID, but one of the comorbidities. And I think that while I'm very ignorant, it seems like there's a lot of people who are very ignorant because they're all trying to figure this out. Even healthcare professionals seem to be trying to figure their way through this thing. And that's how the standards keep changing. I mean, I know how frustrating it is when they say, okay, if you're vaccinated, you can take off the mask, and now you got to put back on the mask and things like that. But we're all just working our way through this. So I'm trying to just take the level of the contention down a little bit and just talk. And I want to bring on my guest because the power of stories. And I know I'm logical, and I always try to go through a logical lens with a lot of things. But I did a post maybe last week or something about the importance of my truth and stories and stuff like that. And even though I did air quotes, there's something very real to that. And I think that sharing stories are what guide us towards truth. Now, they can be manipulated to get us away from truth, but if we can tell stories and find the truth in that, then maybe we can go towards something a little bit better. And that's going to be the hope with this conversation. So let me see if I can bring her in. And we can have the conversation. I appreciate all of you for joining.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, April. How are you?
Hi, I'm on my first Instagram live, so this is a first for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, welcome.
Thank you for having me on. Hold on, let me see.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for doing it because what what happened was, as you know, you're deep in the middle of it, but as such an outsider and someone who's so ignorant to this, I'm just watching the sides go back and forth. My podcast is all about these two sides,
Yeah.
and our mutual friends, Jen and Anthony, were telling me about your story, and I was like, oh man, that sounds horrible. I don't hear a lot of stories like that, and I just wanted to bring you on to try and have you. I want you to share your story, and then also just try to maybe we can get to some level of unity in this whole complicated mess. So please just oh, I just lost her. Um, maybe she'll come back in. Um, but what I want her to do is share her story because it is an important story, and then we can open up to questions. And I have some questions as well. And I'm going to try my best, truly my best, to be objective and to get to the overlap. You know, like if we can find the common ground, that's that's something that's so important. I was talking to the brilliant Irshad Manji yesterday, and she was telling me, you know, just like the word compromise, she likes the term common ground. And if we can find
Yeah.
common ground, then maybe we can get somewhere. Oh, hi, Jason.
So the reason I'm bringing on my husband is I think that you've hit the nail on the head. I think the problem with COVID is we're so separate from data. Data is just a number, right? It's just numbers on a page, and we're losing the humanity of it. And so therefore people don't understand that, okay, I live next door to an ICU nurse. Okay. Those people dying in the ICU from COVID matter, and their stories matter. And the unfortunate thing that happened with me when I drew the short straw is my story, and it matters. But what people don't understand is that the ripple is bigger than just the person. It affected my entire family. My husband's entire life has been on hold for almost 4 months because of what happened to me. So I think this is a bigger picture to kind of look at, and that's why I thought it was important that people could see, like, it's not just me that this affects. This
Well,
affects them as well.
yeah. So tell us kind of your story because I think just before I get into it, the two of you, I know you a bit, and you know
Yeah.
a tweet today that said something along the lines of, I think it's about time that we put the vaccine in Mountain Dew because it's all the just, you know, ignorant MAGA people that are refusing to get the vaccine. And that's just not true, even from a data standpoint. And I know that you guys are nothing against, you know, my Trump supporters, friends out there and stuff like that. But I know that this isn't political for you at all. So please just share your story about like kind of like if you can just go into like the whole thing, because I think that I think the power of stories is really important for getting to this somewhere where we can find common humanity in people, especially those of you out there that do follow me and do give me good pushback, and I appreciate you about the importance of the vaccine and getting the right information out there and stuff like that.
Okay, so the story is on April 10th, I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, hoping that it would go well, knowing that obviously there were some side effects that I was going to feel, but what came down the pipeline was nothing that was on the insert that they handed to me.
Hmm.
Nothing, nothing that I did not expect, all the things that came down the pipeline to me. And basically what it was obviously everything hit exactly 12 hours later. I had chills, fever, gut went offline, body, like full blown, everything you could get from COVID is what I had. Okay. So
Why
that's
did you get the Johnson and Johnson?
from the Johnson & Johnson. Will you do me a favor and shut that is glaring, this thing glaring in my eyeball as I'm
Why did
talking?
you get the Johnson and Johnson as opposed to the Moderna or the Pfizer?
Okay, so just like you will, you know me, I'm a researcher. I did my best to educate myself to the best of my ability and research, like, and now my husband's like, this is, oh, okay, to the best of my ability. The reason I chose the Johnson & Johnson was I thought I was educated, okay? With all the information that was available to me, I was under the impression it was because it was attached to an adenovirus, thinking that it was not mRNA technology, the same. and thinking that it was something different than when it was. But once I got sick and I'm with scientists and doctors trying to heal me, I have figured out and learned now that that is actually not the truth.
But let me gently nudge you back onto
Yeah.
the story.
No, we will, but let me just finish. So the Johnson, sorry, I love you. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is attached to an adenovirus, and it starts at the DNA level, is what I learned now. So it's a DNA level, and it has an mRNA strand in it. And therefore, my body is going to do the duplicating of the mRNA by creating the mRNA in my body. The Moderna and the Pfizer give you the mRNA injected into you for your body to copy that. So with the adenovirus, it starts.
The short version is they basically all do the same thing.
But they're all based
different
on
ways of doing it, but essentially.
Correct, and they're all based on the same technology.
Like a saltwater pool makes chlorine. Something like that.
Something like that. So, you know, I took the vaccine. I was having all of these symptoms. What was very troublesome was I was incredibly dizzy. Everything seemed to be falling apart. And the interesting part about my adverse reaction is that it was not immediate. It was immediate, but I got worse as time went on. Okay, so my body's falling apart. My gut is offline. I can't get off the couch. That's like to be expected, right? But on day 3, my body went into some sort of seizure. I lost control of my body. I called Jason on the phone. I was like, oh my gosh, Jason. I had left
town in the meantime because I thought everything would be fine.
No, you were here at that time.
Okay.
Day 3.
Oh, yeah, day 3.
So I called him. He's at work. I'm like, Jay, I think I'm going to pass out. You need to come home right now. And you know this about me, Will. I had a home breech birth. Okay, I'm a tough cookie. A home breech birth?
Did you?
That means I trust my body. I know.
Hours or something like that.
It's a whole nother conversation. But I trust my body. I know my instincts. I know when to tap out. I had a 53-hour home breech birth, no drugs, no nothing, trusting myself, and all went well. Okay, so I know myself. And I was like, something is so wrong. I feel like my whole body is going to shut off, and I'm either going to have a seizure or I'm going to pass out. And I called him. I'm like, you need to come home right now. If I stop talking on the phone, call 911. I think I'm... And I started, my whole body's convulsing. My fingertips were turning blue. My hands were white. I had lost sensation in all of my body parts. My core was bright red and burning hot. Like just things that are not, there's nothing normal about that, you know? And so then, fortunate for us, obviously that was the day. Then we found out after this happened to me that, oh, they pulled Johnson & Johnson because they're having issues. And I'm like, oh, Lord have mercy, no, right? And about, you know, we had a trip planned, long story short. I kept on having these issues. I went to the urgent care. Then I went to my regular doctor. My regular doctor saw me in person. And my regular doctor, fortunately, I'd seen her a week previously, and I'd seen her a month previously because we did all my blood work, everything.
There's a baseline, yeah.
So we had a baseline that I was a healthy person. And she took one look at me and said, April, I'm so glad I chose to see you in person. You're the wrong color. This does not make sense. You're like yellow or green. We need to get some blood work right now. And as I was telling her like what was happening to my body, she's like, this just doesn't make any sense. It's like you're cycling through COVID. And I'm like, it doesn't make any sense because I had the antibody test to prove that I did not have it. I had PCR tests. We were very conservative, like we got tested.
I was getting tested weekly.
Weekly as a professor.
She was getting tested every 2-3 weeks, something like that.
You know what I'm saying? So I knew that
Did you have pre-existing conditions?
No. Aside from being an older person and my body's starting to go through perimenopause, but every single woman on the planet is going to have that.
Yeah. So,
you know what I'm saying? So I did not.
I thought that you did. I thought you had some sort of like autoimmune disease or something. No. No,
because I had all my blood work that month and tested for all of those things. And the health issues I was having, I realized was actually just perimenopause, and I had to change my diet and just be healthier. That's it. That's it. Part of nature, but that's natural.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And what I've been experiencing ever since the vaccine is unnatural. These are things that nothing is natural about what is happening in my body. So I went to my doctor. She got me all my blood work. Things looked fine, but I was still cycling through all of these really weird things. Then I thought I might have been getting better. Then I wasn't getting better on day 7. I fell off a cliff And it was like in the middle of the night. Now I'm vomiting and I'm like, oh gosh, what is happening now? And that night, my blood pressure, and I didn't have a blood pressure cuff, was through the roof. I couldn't even stand up off the floor. He was waiting in Napa for me to fly up there, and I kept canceling the flight because I couldn't get on the plane because I was like, oh, I'm too sick.
Like, this is going to stop tomorrow.
I kept thinking it was like 3 days of symptoms and you're done.
That's what I was thinking. I thought it was a symptom, right? Because it seems reasonable.
I got the Pfizer, but I had like night sweats. Like, I sweated more than I've ever sweated in my life. Like, it was gross, but like that was it.
Yeah.
Our nanny Lynn had she had like a fever of like 103 or 104, but it was just for like a day, maybe two. She was pretty rough, but then she had Pfizer too. But then she got better. Like, it was short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was hoping that I'd get better and kept saying, no, it's got to pass. And then I'm like, this is not getting better. And on that day 7, and I can tell you this only because I had a home breech birth and I know what it's like to push your body to the limit. The limit. I sat on this couch praying to God that I would not die. I literally, my heart was through my chest. I couldn't string my thoughts together. I mean, my body was going offline.
She couldn't think enough to know that she needed to be in the ER.
Yeah.
Right. And you weren't
and I wasn't here.
I couldn't even advocate for myself.
Like, she needed to have been in the ER, but she couldn't piece together that she needed to be in the ER.
And as I sat there, but I could feel the darkness closing in. I know how people say the stupid things in movies, like the darkness was closing in. No, that happens. There was something closing in, and as soon as I would close my eyes to relax, and that was the thing I should backtrack. What was progressively getting worse is as I was falling asleep at night, as I would try to relax my body, it felt like an elephant was on my body. So what was happening previous to that is all of my muscles and everything were getting inflamed. My entire body was getting inflamed where I couldn't even pinch any fat on my belly. Like, it was like I was a piece of marble. My whole body, it was like rigor mortis setting in on my entire body, which is so hard to explain to anybody.
So this is how far out after the shot? This
is like day 4 and 5. It started getting that way. I was starting to feel the rigor mortis. I was like, why does it feel like I got punched in the kidneys? Why do I feel like I have a kidney infection? And my whole body was reacting by having like literally like, my cat's angry. Rigor mortis, or feeling like my muscles, my neck, everything was like tight. And I'm a voice teacher and a singer. I know my body. I'm very intimately, like, I think about my body all day long. So I understand these things. So as I would close my eyes at night, I could feel the tightness, and it felt like somebody was sitting on my chest. Like, I would stop breathing, which is very strange and crazy. I was sweating buckets and changing my clothing like twice a night because I was drenched in sweat. And then day 7 was when I had what felt like I almost had a heart attack. And this voice inside of in my mind said, April, you are a fighter. If you go to sleep, you are going to die. And I fought like hell, and I kept my body up all night. I kept moving through this night when Jason was up in Napa, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to die on the couch and have my kid wake up and find his mom blue. No, not on my watch. I was like, not today, Satan. This is not happening on my watch. But that is where I was. And the next morning, I couldn't even think straight. And by the morning, I called Jen and Anthony, and literally, I couldn't even speak by then because I'd been fighting for so long. And I was like, I need help. It was like one of those, I couldn't even get it out. I could barely even speak. And she took one look at me and was like, Anthony, you got to go down there right now. And thank goodness he came down and took me to the emergency room, because it helped turn things around for me, because I was able to get on a medication that helped my body not be in a crisis of all of my muscles. My brain was telling all my muscles to freak out.
But let's get into a little societal effects, right? Almost every doctor she spoke to in the beginning basically said, your blood work looks fine, it's in your head, go away. There's nothing wrong, these shots are safe and effective.
Yeah. Well, and this isn't about me, but when I had a stroke in 2018, and I was young,
I remember.
Prolonged dehydration and stuff, and my wife took me to our doctor. He's like, I think it's just a migraine. And I was like, I was out of it. I was like hallucinating stuff. She's like, no, it's not.
I was hallucinating.
and then he was like, well, if you want to go to the ER, you can. And then they went in. I went in the ER in the waiting room, and they were just like, oh, he's fine. He's just stressed or something. Went in, got the scan, and then they're like, oh shit, you have a clot in your brain. You had a stroke. We need to get you there by ambulance right now. And it's like that they kind of like dismiss it. I don't know, maybe it's too many patients or whatever, but I can relate to that where it's like, you know your body better than doctors do sometimes. I mean,
of course you do. You're in your body.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I just relate to that.
No, it's okay. And the thing was, my doctor had already looked at me, knew me, and she is the one who reported a VAERS because she was like, she goes, you are having the worst adverse reaction to this vaccine that I've seen. So she had already acknowledged that you were definitely having an adverse reaction. So when I went into the hospital to say, this is what's happening, I'm having an adverse reaction to the vaccine, blah, blah, they didn't even put it in my chart. And my question to you is, how are we going to know data if they won't even put that in your chart? And how would you heal somebody from something if you can't even acknowledge that that's what they had? So if I went in and said, oh no, I accidentally ingested arsenic. There was arsenic in this bottle. And then them saying, oh no, arsenic is safe and effective. And don't include it in my chart. How could they heal me from poisoning from arsenic? It's kind of like, I feel like the logic train has like gone, where's the logic? There's no logic. There's no logic.
So, I mean, we can see with the story, but just playing devil's advocate, why do you think that is? Why is it? Is there like an ulterior motive? Should I put on my tinfoil hat and say like, well, the doctors are paid off by big pharma and blah, blah. Like what do you guys think it is? You're logical people. What do you think that this is?
First of all, we don't totally agree on every aspect.
No, we don't. That's what's good about us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when you are learning medicine, it's like, if you're a carpenter, you work with tools. Like if you're a doctor, you work with drugs, that's your form of healing, right? If you're a homeopathic person, you use homeopathic medicine. So you're going to think with the modality that you learned through healing. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's a big cognitive dissonance because when you have something that has saved lots of people, you don't, and it continuously is said, it is safe and effective. It is safe and effective. We all know this from like crazy stuff can be said over and over again, and all of a sudden it becomes true for people, right? I'm not saying that it's not true for many people. It's true for many people. Uh-oh. Gotta tell my kid, he's on Roblox with Julian. Is that because there's a cognitive dissonance about that? Like the willingness to even address it is not there. And I think that sadly enough, this is a good time with everybody looking at vaccine mandates to have a real conversation about what does safety look like for people. For example, if we put down a mandate and said everybody is going to have to come to the doctor and take a spoonful of peanut butter.
Because peanut butter is safe and effective.
Because peanut butter is safe and effective and on the shelves, and every man, woman, and child
allergies, yeah.
needs to go and have that. How many people would be up in arms about, well, people are going to die from anaphylactic shock from eating peanut butter.
But it's only 1.5%. It's only 0.5% of the kids that'll die. So who cares?
So it's worth killing those people because the other ones will live. Like, and this is obviously the position where we're in at the moment. Can you tell Adrian he's going to have to move it to his bedroom?
Yeah.
He's going to start talking really loudly. You got to go to your bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be the challenge is like, well, you don't necessarily need peanuts, but the idea of the numbers I understand, but when more people are being saved by the vaccine than suffering these adverse reactions, maybe clouds it a little bit.
True, and that's like with anything. However, I think the bigger conversation to have here is if you don't have something called informed consent,
right,
you cannot consent to it. And what I can say is I 100% did not have an informed consent. I went above and beyond anybody else to try to inform myself, and I still did not have informed consent.
Right.
So this is a bigger conversation to look at, I think, as a society. it's just, it's, you know, obviously something, you know,
Well,
we're going to have these hard conversations. That's why I love what you're doing. Nobody's having the nuanced conversations. This is not black and white. Coming for vaccinated or unvaccinated people with pitchforks is never going to solve anything. And this is one question I have, because I'm on the logic train, and this is my logic train. The logic train says this: if you're sitting there up in arms blaming everything on unvaccinated people, but COVID is not going anywhere and is going to continue to mutate, the inevitability of every single one of us probably getting COVID is pretty almost like 100%. If vaccinated people are catching COVID, and it's less, thank goodness, if the vaccines are working, right? But the point is, we're going to catch it. So why is nobody talking about how to help us? Or why is nobody saying, hi, you have an emergency kit for earthquakes. Where's your emergency kit for getting COVID?
well,
And
yeah,
this is where I'm more like upset about not seeing that we're talking about this, but.
Or lose some damn weight.
well, that,
people,
you know, healthy lifestyle is
healthy.
That's a frustration that a lot of people have, is like, why is that not being promoted enough when you look at 78% of the people who are in the hospital are obese? And this isn't about fat shaming or anything like that. We're just trying to get to what the truth is. And now that we know that vaccinated people can not just get it, but also pass it, which, I mean, just a few weeks ago, we didn't know that.
I
We thought
knew that.
it could only pass like from a non-vaccinated to a vaccinated, but not a vaccinated to another non-vaccinated. Now it seems like it can pass. We're all just stumbling around. And the lack of grace that I see, that people are so certain that this is just the way you should be. And it's really on either side, but it's more of the pro-vaccination for everybody camp seems to be more of like, there's no reason for you not to. Well, that's just not true.
Well, go ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
And let me just fill in one little part, not little, one big part of the story. This has gone on for 4 months. She's had food sensitivities. Every single aspect of our life has changed. We can't go to restaurants. We can't go anywhere. There's no way we're getting on a plane.
He's been working from home for 4 months to watch
me. Month 2 and 3, she's cried and said, I've just made peace with the fact that I might not make it to my next birthday. Right? So this is not like she had the side effects for a week.
So what's it like now then?
So now, yeah, so fast forward, I guess, that was week 1.
She's had 10 good days right now, but she's not normal.
Yeah. I've had 10 days where I have been able to keep my symptoms and my flare-ups under control, that I can function as if I'm at 50% of myself normally.
You did a vlog, right, of this process?
Yeah. No, I just did it on day 19 to let people know what was happening to me. And that was day 19. I thought it would be done soon.
Yeah.
We're 4 months in now.
Right.
And so for me, what has changed, so all of those things continued to go and spiral. My body was basically circling the drain. What was happening was I was having a vascular autoimmune like response. And your vascular system is like your blood goes to everything in your whole body, and it's going to affect everything in your whole body. It means that now I'm allergic to everything under the sun. And I've never been allergic to anything my whole life. What is happening is that anything that will make my body mount an immune response is triggering the same immune response that I had that night that I thought I was going to die. I can't tell you how bad it is. Like when it goes bad, the gut goes offline until it's water. I'm vomiting until it's bile. My heart is through the roof. I can't breathe. My veins are popping out of my whole body because I'm starved for oxygen. My pulse ox shows and my oxygen drops. It's like my body's going haywire and off, completely off. And that happened from having a little bit of soy sauce. Oops.
And can I be clear? We both understand that COVID is really bad. There's neither one of us would ever deny that COVID is bad. The symptoms that she has are identical to long COVID, but we know that she hasn't had COVID.
Plus neurological things on top of it.
Right. So we know that COVID is bad. We're not trying to minimize it.
No, of course.
Yeah.
We're careful. We wear our masks. We see this as a real issue. At the same time, it's a gray issue, right?
Is it these symptoms that you have, how unique are these to you? Are they more found in people with COVID? Or are they more found in people with Johnson & Johnson or other vaccines? Where have you found others? Like
Yes.
now that you're I saw that you went on the news to talk about this, which must have been uncomfortable for you, but I'm glad you did it.
It was very uncomfortable, but
like,
I had to do it.
Yeah. And Fox News was the only one that would bring you on. Same with me. They're the ones that bring me on too. But what is, where do you have you, so maybe you have found other people that are like, oh, me too. So I got like DMing me and stuff like that. Where do you see people with similar symptoms, or do you not?
So there was a group of 5,000 of us collectively.
5,000?
Uh-huh.
Like you?
Over
like
the span of a few, no, over the span of a few groups. And about 5,000 collectively, because we were kind of looking at it. And we found each other, and everybody's just saying, hey, I'm having these reactions. Are you having these? And a lot of us are all having very similar effects. And these are the effects. People are coming away with MCAS, which is mast cell activation syndrome. So people can look that up. People are walking away with POTS, orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. People are dealing with, it's not, what is it called?
Like Hashimoto, like?
No. Your immune system dysfunction, autonomic system dysfunction. Your autonomic system is what deals with your heart beating, your lungs breathing. What's happening is there's a misfiring in the brain happening to your body and extremities. And that's why I'm having, like I lay in bed and I'm having like these weird there's like neuropathy, there's nerves dying in your legs. Like it's a host of bad stuff.
Once you start listening for it,
it's bad.
We run into people all the time and they're like, oh yeah, my legs went numb. I didn't think it was that. Or, oh yeah, I was getting shocks in my legs. Or like we start hearing people with similar symptoms regularly.
They're just not knowing that it's actually probably connected to that, because it's the only thing. They're not typical things to do. To look, to have tingles all over your body.
Yeah.
So there's thousands and thousands.
So there's thousands of people, and a lot of people are coming through with a lot. And I'm not listing. There's a whole list, and I would love for people to go check out. There's a website called C19 Vax Reactions, and that's a good website to look at with a bunch of people. And like me or like us, if you are experiencing an issue, I would suggest to go there. You can try to connect to all of us. And there's another one called vaxlonghaulers.com. And we're basically trying to put together a way for us to take care of each other, because the reality is it's so new. Since the CDC hasn't acknowledged that this list of things will happen to you, if we went to the doctor in the emergency room, they wouldn't know to look for that list, and they wouldn't know how to treat. Like, it's kind of like we need to get the ball rolling so people understand what to look out for, right?
Right. Okay, so my question is,
yes,
with like being silenced. So Johnson & Johnson was pulled off for a little bit because like 6 women got clots, but there were women on birth control, which I know because I had a clot, like that could be aligned, but they pulled it because of that. And then when you look at the CDC website, it says, I believe 2 or 3 total deaths from the vaccine. That's all that's there. And then everything that's on the VAERS website is unconfirmed.
On the CDC website, it says 2 or 3.
Yeah, I just looked up. Someone sent it to me in my DMs. I just looked it up. Yep. It said 2 to 3 total deaths from all the vaccines is on the CDC website. So what it feels like when it says, well, because the ones on the VAERS, which is thousands and thousands and thousands, are not confirmed. But when COVID deaths were racking up, and it was hundreds of thousands, I talked to a lot of, I had 2 friends who are COVID nurses, and they said, I shared this on my Instagram, but they said, the people that died from COVID, and a lot did, they're like, it could have been from COVID, or like there were many things, but I got chalked up as a COVID death. This feels like the mirror image of that, where it's like benefit of the doubt goes to calling it a COVID death, but the benefit of the doubt for the vaccines would call it like not a vaccine death or something like that. But that's what, and I just looked at it today, someone sent it to me. That's what it is. So are these being silenced? Are your stories being silenced? Like, how are they being silenced? Who are they being censored by? Like, that's, I guess, where my next question is.
Well, I can start with this. I'm in these groups. There were groups on Facebook. A lot of them have been nuked. Okay?
Deleted.
is Facebook, and they've been systematically deleting not groups of anti-vaxxers, mind you. I'm sure they have been doing that as well. But why is Facebook systematically nuking groups of people who took the vaccine, who are all super sick, who are talking to each other saying, hey, what doctor are you going to? Maybe I can go to that doctor. Like sharing information to heal each other. Like you'd be nuking cancer groups, like groups of people sick with cancer. Like it's just so disturbing and illogical on so many levels. And the only thing you can do is draw your own conclusions and say, well, why would Facebook benefit from making sure that people who are sick like me can't contact other people that are sick?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know, but that's a question to ask.
Right. Like even an educational tool, I'm like, let's just share information and you know, stuff gets shut down on mine all the time. Like, well, I'm just trying to figure this out. Like, why are you shutting down an education tool? You're trying to say like, well, if someone's like, hey, I had the same symptoms as you, April, this helped.
Yes.
Which gets me into ivermectin. Yeah. And Brett Weinstein and Pierre Corey and others have talked about it on YouTube, and YouTube shut them down. You're familiar with ivermectin?
I am very familiar with ivermectin, and I think to get to this point, I think we should go to another point, is that a lot of scientists and doctors are healing people like me, and one of the drugs they're using is ivermectin. So one has to ask themselves, when I've seen people that I know who literally are having the Parkinson-like shakes, are unable to walk, take some ivermectin, and it incredibly decreases their symptoms so that they can walk up a flight of stairs. Okay? Yeah. Why would the medical community discount anything that helped anybody with COVID? That's the bigger question I have.
Especially something really proven safe. Like I don't know that I believe that ivermectin is a medical cure or not, right? I'm not settled on that. But it's really, really safe, and it appears to help some people.
And that's
so
really all that you care
where's
about
the harm in figuring it out, right? Like, why can't we talk about it? Why can't we have a rational discussion about it?
Well, right. Well, Brett Weinstein's been hearing that. He went on the Joe Rogan podcast like as like a surprise like thing or as like an emergency thing and talked about it. And it's not covered under a patent anymore, I guess, or something along those lines. So there's not a lot of money in it, which is part of it. And that's my cynical, tinfoil hat brain. But even as a prophylactic, it seems to have a lot of benefits. And these are doctors, but he's getting shut down. And if you go to Brett Weinstein's Wikipedia page, it says that he spreads misinformation about COVID, but he's a scientist breaking down scientific papers. Mm-hmm. This all just feels very, very strange to me. And I know people say I'm a conspiracy theorist and stuff like that. I'm trying not to be. I really am. I don't know what else to do. Like I'm compiling this stuff, and I want to get back to that. But like I wrote down a few things of like why people might be untrusting of institutions. It's not FDA approved. The NIH owns the patent to the Moderna. Big Pharma is the biggest lobbying group in this country with $4.4 billion per year and 3 lobbyists per every congressman. They're free from liability. And we've seen in the past, whether it's tobacco or the food pyramid or whatever, these things that were just like the thing, this is safe, this is the way to do it. And then they go, oh, whoops, actually it's not. Like we know this over and over again as a history teacher. Like we need to learn from history that these institutions do have, like a corporation like Big Pharma, are they more moral than tobacco? I think corporations are corporations. They're trying to make money, and maybe that's me being cynical, but all of this stuff adds up to like, it might be nothing, but it might be something too. And that's what I'm kind of wrestling with.
Well, the bigger question for me is this. If you can say we're going to have an emergency use for a vaccine that is new to market and being tried on all of us as the guinea pigs, which is the truth because it's not out of the clinical trial stage. So we basically are all in the clinical trials, but they're not collecting our data, which I find. I love data, so I'm a little disturbed by that. They should have had a tracker app where for the data. That would be wise, but that's just me. So why is it that we can take that back a vaccine, but heaven forbid we prescribe something off-label that's working in third world countries?
Yeah.
And it's like something such as ivermectin. It's so illogical to me. It's just so illogical to me. And obviously, we all want people not to be sick with COVID. Like, I think everybody wants the same thing.
Yeah.
People who are vaccinating want COVID to go away. People who are not vaccinating want COVID to go away. Nobody wants COVID to be around here. So I think it's time for us to actually stand up as citizens, and that's why it's great that we're having this discussion, and talk about, with our fellow brothers and sisters, having compassion and love, and saying, hey, let's find some solutions. And if things are working, let's share them.
And aren't we all on the same team? We're all going the same direction.
Yes.
Why are we fighting each other over stupid things?
It's really, it's insane.
I don't even know where to get. I'm tempted to get ivermectin just to have as like a prophylactic, or I've heard that if you get COVID, that to take it right away, it really helps. And there's not a lot of downside to it because it's used like so just like ubiquitously and for like parasites and stuff. But it's silenced. I mean, I looked it up on YouTube, and there's like, you know, like Good Morning America's resident doctor is just like, it's a dangerous drug and it's all a conspiracy theory pushed by, you know, Republicans or something like that, or pushed by media. Social media conspiracy theorists. And I even reached out to the doctor. No, they're not going to come on my channel, but I'm like, how do you know? Like, why are you so confident in this? Like, isn't it possible that that's not what it is? I don't know.
I think that, you know, back to that emergency kit, I would like to push for everybody to advocate for themselves. And I think that there's something called responsibility. People need to start taking personal responsibility for themselves and their own health. Because if a vaccinated person can give you COVID just as much as an unvaccinated person, you need to prepare yourself for getting sick with COVID. So do your research and find out, what do you need in your emergency kit that's in waiting there, so that on day one that you test positive for COVID, you're right. Like, I'm on top of this. Because what happens if you don't do it if you're not doing it quickly enough, you're going to mount a cytokine storm for those that are immune, like that's your immune reaction, just like the luck of the draw.
What's your 5 items? You got to have 5 items in your emergency kit. What do you have?
For me, I would 100% have ivermectin, because
How do you get ivermectin? You talk to your doctor and request it?
That's part of my treatment protocol.
But that's one way. That's one way.
You don't need to share your personal like thing.
Yeah. No, part of my treatment protocol is ivermectin.
Okay.
So ivermectin.
So ivermectin, high dosages of vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, mm-hmm. 10,000 IUs of vitamin D.
Okay.
I would do the zinc and quercetin as well. I don't know how many off the top of my head.
Yeah, I take quercetin.
Yeah, quercetin. Vitamin C. You want high dosages of vitamin C. No, vitamin D and vitamin C. And D.
C, D, quercetin, ivermectin.
And zinc.
All of those things are over the counter except for the ivermectin, correct?
Except the ivermectin. Yeah, but I can only say, and this is anecdotal, mm-hmm. but I can just say, okay, my mom and stepfather just had COVID. A bad row of COVID. And they happened to live in Texas. My mom was doing okay, and their doctor had prescribed them, I think, what was it? They'd prescribed them hydroxychloroquine, and it is their regular doctor, hydroxychloroquine, some sort of, what is it called? Antibiotic, and then what's the other? This is the point. I have brain fog. So sorry. That's another thing that happens. Your brain doesn't work anymore. Yay. And then, tell me about. Oh God. Anyways, long story short, they took those things. My stepdad was not getting better. He had 14 days of 102 fever. He was not getting out of bed. This dude is tough. He was not getting out of bed. He was leveled, and I could hear in his voice he was very scared. So was my mom, and I was like, Mom, please find a way to get some ivermectin. She got him ivermectin. Day 1, after 14 days, he broke his fever. Day 2, he was sweating profusely. Day 3, he was starting to feel better and getting out of bed. And day 5 is when I just talked to him, and he's like, I think I'm going to go do gardening. Mow the lawn. And he couldn't even get out of bed for 2 weeks. Now, that's completely anecdotal and just my family experience. But what I've seen with my own eyeballs is that he was thinking he had to go to the hospital. And he didn't have to once he took it. And that's just one person. So take it for whatever it is, but that's only my personal experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any conflict in my head about COVID being serious. And just like both of you said, like COVID being serious and the vaccine, COVID having risks and the vaccine having risks, and probably the vaccine being far more safe for the general population than COVID is. But that doesn't mean it's safe. You know, there's so many things I talk about on this podcast that are really controversial. And you know, the data around, I did a podcast, released it yet, with Professor Wilfred Riley at Kentucky State. He wrote a book on hate crime hoaxes, which is interesting. But he, you know, one of the things he kind of pushes, like the data around hate crimes and hate crime hoaxes, and how many, like, you know, actual like white supremacists attacking, you know, a biracial couple are there. It's actually very, very small. But that doesn't tell the whole story, because if you are attacked, that is very real, and that's something that we as a general society need to pay attention to. You can look at the data around how many like unarmed, complying, you know, black men are killed by cops, and it's very small. But the story of Sandra Bland or Philandra Castile is so powerful because that story matters. Individuals matter, and we can't just say, well, it's, you know, not a lot of people experience this, or only a handful died, like you said about the peanuts, because that still matters. And where's your compassion for that reality? It's just something that I think is really important for the people who are just looking at numbers and believing them, even if the numbers aren't cooked or anything like that. Just go, well, you know, it's not that big of a deal. No, it still is. And if you're going to say that it's a big deal for just a handful of unarmed, complying black men get killed by police, which it should, then a handful of people who have adverse reactions should matter too. Does that?
Yeah, and we don't. And here's the thing: we don't know whether that's a handful or
right.
Like, if you take our anecdotal information, right? We did some math. Okay, the number of people we know times divided by our Facebook friends, and I'm like, okay, this might be like 0.5% of the people. Okay, well, if you take 1 billion vaccinated people, 0.5% is a very large number that is not willing to be acknowledged by the medical community as we need to fix these people. And this problem with this, like everything in our society is left or right, or black or white, or A or B. Everything is not like left or right. It's not that simple. You can vaccinate people, and you can help the people that are injured by the vaccination, right? You can look at both of these things and figure out, like, okay, we're saving more people, but we're also going to give you the data, and we're going to let you make a smart, wise decision whether you should be taking it for your health situation or not, right? Because what happened to that my body, my choice thing that everybody was all hot into 5 years ago, right? 3 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know your body, you know what your health effects are. Here's what's going to happen. In a year, they're going to come around and say, everyone needs a vaccine. And April's going to say, the vaccine almost killed me. And her doctor's going to say, I'm afraid to write a letter because when you write letters in California, you get kicked out of the doctor community. That's what happens with kids and vaccinations right now, right?
Right now they pull,
So her doctor's going to be afraid to write the letter in a year. And then April's going to be able to, like, not go to a museum and not have a driver's license or whatever stupid shit they're going to pull to say, right, oh, well, you won't get your boosters, so you're screwed. That's where we're headed right now. And that's what terrifies me, because it would kill her.
Well, right. I mean, this is like the whole vaccine passport thing and mandatory for jobs. If you don't, I mean, my friends who are COVID nurses, they were around COVID the whole time, but they know procedure with the N95. They didn't get it. I know I'm friends with a dentist in Colorado, and she didn't get it. I mean, they're very careful, but if they don't want it, then they're going to lose their jobs. I mean, that's a very real thing coming down the pipe, and it doesn't. I don't know what to do with that, with what you're saying, Jason. Like, it doesn't, I don't know where to go from here, because it feels very like whatever, like 1984, you know, oppressive, like, institutions mandating that you do something that isn't necessarily good for you. But even if it turns out, like, whatever, that it is completely safe, and this had nothing to do with the vaccine, which I'm not saying, obviously, but like, it still, you can't mandate that. Like, how is that something that would ever fly for this country? It can't be, and yet people are willingly doing it. I'm very confused by the willingness of people. Don Lemon just said on CNN, you don't get the vaccine, then you can't go to the movies, you can't go to the grocery store. What is going on? You know, maybe it's more like Brave New World, where people are just like gladly giving up, like, rights and stuff like that. It's very strange to me.
I was going to say the immunocompromised. Here we are always saying you have to get the vaccine so that the immunocompromised don't get COVID. But you're going to mandate, but let's mandate that the immunocompromised who might die from the vaccine have to take it. Like, where logic, I feel like critical thinking, I'm so glad that you're a teacher. Like, we just need to talk to people about critical thinking and reasoning through and taking people and saying, listen to your own experience, listen to your brain, look at logic. Does that logically line up?
Let me ask you
something. Don't line up.
For both of you, because I know you a bit, like, what if, hypothetical, you took the vaccine, you got a little bit of a sweat, and you were fine? Do you think like, this is not a good thing by any stretch, not lightning, but like, did this, I don't mean this in an insulting way, but did this kind of like open your eyes up to like in other areas as well of like what's kind of going on? Did this like change you fundamentally? And you think that if you had a great experience, you might be on that train of like, oh, just get the vaccine, or no? I
would never have been on the just get the vaccine train because I do believe my body, my choice. Unlike a lot of people, I'm kind of extreme in that way.
Okay.
So if you have the rights to your body, you have the rights to your body. It's a little extreme to think, but that's what I believe. It's like.
But the basic answer to Will's question, this has softly radicalized you. You are very different in your viewpoints and opinions than you were 3 months ago.
Well, because my entire life came to a screeching halt.
I'm not saying it's wrong.
I can't live normally.
No. Yeah. And here's the problem.
And I think I'm
here's the problem with absolutely denying it. If in the beginning the CDC and the FDA said, holy shit, now we're finding out that there are some bad things, and here's transparent information, and we're going to do everything we can to help you, then she would have been on here saying, you know what? Yes, there were problems, but our government's been great about it, and they all have the answers. Right now, she's not saying that. And I, who am very like anti these conspiracy theory idiots.
He's very much so.
Right? Like, you don't believe there's conspiracy theories until you're part of one and you witness this shit.
That's the problem.
So you basically, the government's denial of all this stuff is radicalized to some extent, and that's a harsh word, right? So let's take whatever the softer version of that word is, but it's taken me to another extreme and platform because I don't want to trust this stuff. Why would I trust this stuff now when I watch it happening and then I watch everybody saying, no, you're fine. They said it's safe and effective. There's nothing wrong with
and everybody that I tell says, you're just lucky that you didn't get COVID because it would have killed you. I was like, the vaccine almost killed me. Do you realize that's gaslighting me? Like, my experience, like.
How do you know that? Like, why? Yeah, like people. How do you know that? But yeah, that's a great point, Jason. Like, I think that a lot of people become that way from experiences, and then what happens is they lose trust in this thing, and then they just go, you know what? I just lose trust in everything. Because if you lied about this, then you lie about everything. It's like your best friend lies to you, okay? And then you catch them, and then you're like, okay, I'll bring that. And then they lie to you again. You're like, I'm never going to trust you again, ever, about anything, because you lied to my face twice. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. I mean, come on. And I think that's what a lot of people are going through, is they just lost faith, whether it's the institutions, when they lost their retirement with the 2008 crash or whatever it is, all these different things where they listened to the people who were in charge and they got duped, and then they just lose faith and they go off the deep end, and then they end up watching Alex Jones and then joining QAnon because they just don't know they don't know up from down. And that's a real problem.
Well, here's the thing. I am part of that little subset group of being marginalized now. Had the government said, oh, you're vaccine injured, okay, out of the billions of dollars we put together for COVID, we have set aside however many, $1 billion for the people that are injured to study them, to help them get better, because we're all in this together. We're all in this, and the health of the society and people matter to us, right? Had they done that and given me a parachute, then this would be a far different conversation. And anybody in my position would be thinking that that's a far different conversation. I feel like it's insanity. If they would just address us, injured people who are not going to get the vaccine might be more inclined to get the vaccine.
I think it would.
Knowing there was a safety net and a parachute, but they gave me a brick instead of a parachute.
Here's my analogy, right? You send people to Omaha Beach to do the invasion, but then you leave all the injured people on the beach to die, and you just pretend they don't exist, okay? Yeah. Does that make people want to join the military?
Right.
Hell no.
No.
Right? You go on there and you rescue those people no matter what, and you acknowledge what happens and you fix them, right? But we're not doing that because there's some fear here that if people hear, oh, hey, heaven forbid, there's a side effects, or here, I'll say the controversial thing. I believe the vaccines cause long COVID in certain number of people, okay? You will not hear that on the news. To me, that is a freaking truth, an absolute, utter truth. I've seen it with my own eyes, okay?
I have blood work.
She has the blood work to prove it, okay? So, you know, like, acknowledge those things. It all can exist. And I can still go out and I can still say, I think most people should get the vaccine. Right. But I do think you need to make your own decision based on your health situation. I'm not going to tell you, Will, you got to go do it or whatever. Right. I'm not going to tell you what you have to do.
Because April was healthy.
I'm so healthy. I was healthier than I've been in years after getting pregnant, getting healthy, dealing with figuring all of my stuff out. I was so healthy. And that's why I'm like mourning the loss of like getting back to being so healthy. I'm like, and now.
So, because it's not like, when people say like, well, I'm not going to get the vaccine because maybe I am immunocompromised, or I have an autoimmune disease, or I have a tendency to clot. Like, that's why I was like hesitant about COVID, but I got the vaccine. Like, there were no signs or symptoms or like warning signs for you, I'm sorry, that like would say that you're going to have an adverse reaction, yet you did.
No.
So, but transparency is what it is. That's like, I think the biggest thing I'm trying to get through with this podcast is like, just shoot us straight. Just shoot us straight. Here are the real risks. And people are like, well, that's in the paperwork. It's like, no one reads the paperwork. And as you said, it wasn't in the paperwork.
It wasn't in the paperwork.
So just shoot put it out there. And let people make an informed decision, knowing there are risks and there are risks. There should be a website of all the people that died from wearing seatbelts, from fires and drowning, and then all the people that had their lives saved from the seatbelts, and say, make your decision about seatbelts, but know what it is. And that's not what's happening. They're silencing everyone that died in a flood or a fire from seatbelts and saying, there's no reason not to wear a seatbelt. And that's just not true. And when people know that these institutions, the most powerful institutions on the planet, are lying to you, then it gets more scary, because then the most powerful entity is lying to you. Then you just feel like it's like an oppressive kind of thing looming over you. I think that transparency is spot on.
It's this beautiful irony that you kind of assume that we're dumb, so that in order to get information, we go to alternate sources, which might actually not be the most intelligent sources. You don't know, right? So it's kind of this like endless loop of forcing people into the wrong places in a way. Like, it's just not well thought, clearly.
It's not. You know, and here's the thing.
Yeah.
I always come back to data, because I didn't realize, I've spent the past 3 months in bed, sick, 4 months, reading every single scientific study I can get my hands on, reading data, watching people at Stanford who are immunologists. I'm learning immunology because I need to heal myself, because nobody else seems to be knowing what to do with me. A lot of people in my group are begging the CDC. I mean, people I just say my group, meaning, you can look at C19 vax reactions. A lot of the people have kind of flocked there. I'm sure there are other places that people are as well. But, there are people also who were in the clinical trials, and as soon as they got sick, they were unblinded, and just their data was not.
When you're unblinded, your data is removed from the trial.
So just stop to think about that. If you couldn't get the second shot of, let's say, Pfizer, I don't know, I'm just making it up, and you couldn't get it because you were so sick with all these symptoms in the hospital that they unblinded you.
And
then they don't take down any of your information of like what that adverse reaction looks like, and they just said had to drop out for adverse events, but didn't actually take the data. How is that helping anybody? That means that that's not actually true data of a study. Like, and I don't need to be a scientist to use logic to look at that and say that's not logical. If the CDC was smart, they would come and study us, study the people that are sick. Do you know why? I am the missing link. What's wrong with?
If she didn't get COVID, but she has the symptoms of long COVID, and then you overlap that with people who got long COVID and had COVID, that little middle area right there is the solution.
Yeah, so
right?
I'm actually to be studied. Study the adverse reactions, study these people, because what do we genetically have in common? What do we have in common immunologically? Like, Look at those, put that in, and try to get that data to overlap. And there you're going to find then you can say, okay, people, get this test. You're more susceptible to having a terrible cytokine storm and getting sick with COVID. But unfortunately, they have not been very interested in my experience, what I've seen. I'm sure maybe they're doing it or not, but I mean, you saw I was on with like a senator who's pushing for this. I mean, it's just not happening. It's not happening. And if the objective is to help stop COVID, why are there crickets?
Right.
When you're looking at a big subset of data, and the data's right here.
Yeah. So, yeah, we did an hour. April and Jason, thank you for being here. I don't know. People say, like, with a lot of these things, this one particularly, like, I don't know what to do. What can I do? I'm like, I don't know. Become a school teacher, start a podcast. Like, I don't know. That's what I'm doing. I don't know. So maybe share this, when people are watching it and things like that, and just share the stories and just be bold and brave enough to go out and take those arrows, because as you said, now you're like one of the, to some people, you're one of the bad guys, even though you're clearly the victim here of a very, very powerful institution. You're the bad guy for spreading information. That's misinformation when you have the paperwork and it's very real. Like, it's so strange, but we have to be able to stand up. And even if you've had a good reaction, I got the vaccine, I am vaccinated, and I had a good reaction to it. That doesn't mean that it's like, oh, well, that's your problem, April. Like, that's not the way we have to be in society. It's not, and it really, as much as it's great that I know you personally, it has nothing to do with me knowing you personally. That was just how I was able to connect with you to bring you on. Mm-hmm. But we have to have like real kindness and grace with one another. And if your story doesn't get that out of someone who's like, the vaccinate everybody people, then they just have a wall up that they just refuse. They just choose to be willfully ignorant, and there's nothing we can do to those people.
We can't. We really can't. Yeah. What I was going to say, I think that some medical professionals that I have spoken to have told me nobody's died from the vaccine, and I just sit there and I can't wrap my brain around it. Mostly because the data is right there, and yes, it has, and it's inevitable that somebody would die because we're all different. Like, I think it's just important we all have conversations with each other. The way that we can move forward, I think, is to encourage conversations like this that are not black and white, that are nuanced, that are addressing the complexity of the issue, that are also reminding people that stripping away liberties willingly, giving it on a platter, is going to have a really the pendulum's going to swing the other way. And you may like that right now while you like who's in charge.
Right.
Guess what? Someone else might be in charge in 4 years, and maybe they're going to push something through you're not going to want to do. And then now it's a law that you have to do this. You have to.
When have governments taken power and given it back? Once they got it, they got it. And and it's all, Caesar took power during like time of crisis, but then oh well, it's mine now. The Great Depression and World War II, and then you're like, oh well, this is mine now. This kind of feels nice. You don't know, but you don't believe that it's 3 people that have died from the vaccine across the world, right? It could be
zero chance that is true.
There's zero chance that that's true because it
could be tens of thousands. It could.
Well, according to VAERS, yes, we have, I think it was like 10,000 last I checked that were reported. So mind you, my doctors who reported for me, and I know a lot of people are up in arms saying, anybody can report to VAERS. I'm like, do you know how complicated that is to do all that paperwork? And most people, it's their doctors reporting to VAERS. And here's the thing. If VAERS is not the way to be reporting these things, where's the national system that you can report these things that's vetted? It's just...
Well, right. Well, and I do want to wrap it up, but where is the incentive? What is your incentive to fake it? Because we're talking to Wilfred Riley, which is an interesting guy, and I tried to get pushback, but there's an incentive in not to derail the conversation, but in faking a hate crime. There could be, because you get, you know, you get some sort of props for being a victim or something along those lines. You get like recognized as, you know, a hero to some degree because you withstood some sort of horrible attack or something. There's no celebration of someone who for reporting bad adverse reactions. There's nothing that you get from that. So there's no incentive structure to fake it. So yeah, maybe someone would fake it, but like, why? Why? Like that doesn't pass the sniff test for me.
No.
I don't see it as an incentive in going through that crazy process. But thank you guys so much for being here, sharing your story. I'm gonna put this on my feed. We'll see if it gets censored. I hope it doesn't. And I hope people can share it. And I want to thank everyone for joining and offering your thoughts and stuff like that. This seems like an appropriate use for a platform, and I don't know how I got this platform, but I feel like this is probably the way I should be using it. So I couldn't do it without the two of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being willing to have a rational, normal, regular discussion. And even if that somehow these days is like, you know, controversial or whatever, like I don't feel like anything we talked about should be controversial. So I just thank you for being willing to stick your neck out there and saying normal things that society freaks out about these days.
Can we just remind everybody, I feel like if we had saved someone's life from this conversation, which is possible, because a lot of people who are in my position who don't have an amazing husband, who don't have a support system, I mean, we lost track of like people who were suicidal in our groups, okay? It is a scary, scary place to be. So I want people to know that the doctors, you may not find the right doctors, but find other people that are sick like you. Maybe come to the C19 Vax Reactions or, you know, vaxlonghaulers.com. Find a community, and together we can try to figure this out, because there's strength in numbers. And, you know, when you're sick, you are 100% committed to becoming healthy. Like I'm 100% committed to becoming healthy, because I will not, I'm not, I promised him 50th anniversary, I'm getting there, you know. But if we can do that, and hopefully, thank you for giving us a voice for that. So thank you.
Okay, guys. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Bye.
Bye.